two main ways that wastewater is dealt with. One, and probably the most common these days, is going to be a sewer. If you live in a city or somewhere that has a wastewater treatment plant close by, you can tie into the city sewer. And basically, the wastewater leaves the house, flows down a tight line to where it hooks up to the sewer. It's carried off to a wastewater treatment plant where it's purified there. If you live in a rural area like we're in, city sewer is not even an option. So we have to go the septic route. And basically a septic system works by wastewater leaving the house, flows into a tank, and then it's carried out into leach lines where it's purified by the soil. So there are a few different types of septic systems, but they all work on the same principle. How you get to the end result is what varies. But for us, we have a standard gravity-fed system. It works like this. Whatever wastewater is generated from the house flows down a tight line and then into a septic tank. The septic tank has a baffle in the middle of it with inspection covers on either side of the baffle. What happens is the liquid and solid flow into the tank and are separated. So if you can imagine the tank here, the solids sink to the bottom and become part of what's called sludge. And in that first part of the tank, there's a lot of bacteria working to break down the solids that you end up putting in there. And then there's liquid in there, and on top of the liquid is where the grease and oils kind of float to the top, and they create what's called the scum layer, which stays on that side of the tank. So what's left is the liquid. The liquid falls into the other side of the tank, on the other side of the baffle, and eventually finds its way down another tight line or distribution line and flows into leach lines. And leach lines are perforated plastic pipe, typically, that are laid in trenches that are dug, and below the leach line is about 7 inches of 3/4 to 1 inch crushed rock, and above that is another 4 inches or so of crushed rock. And the liquid leaves the leach line and flows down into the soil, and the soil essentially purifies that liquid and takes out the bacteria and the nutrients, that whatever was left in the liquid, and purifies the liquid, and it eventually becomes part of the groundwater. In order to choose which type of septic system you're going to go with, you need to have your soil tested. This is called, or that test is called a Perkin mantle. This is not something that I know how to do. We hired a local septic designer out of Auburn here, Lindblom Septic and Design, and they came out and they take soil samples from a few different parts of your property to determine where your leach field's going to be. And basically what the Perkin mantle does is it tells you the absorption rate that your soil can accommodate, and those numbers will determine what type of system you end up having to install. For us, our soil had a great absorption rate, and it qualified for a standard gravity-fed system, which, lucky for us, is the most cost-effective of the different types of septic systems you can install. How do you pull a septic permit? So this is going to be unique to wherever you live, but for us in Placer County, California, California regulates everything. So when it came time for us to put a septic tank in the ground, the state needs to be aware of it and make sure it's not going to harm the environment or anything. So the results of your Perkin mantle test are used by the septic designer to design your system. You take their design into the county. For us, we have to go to the environmental health counter, and you submit your design, pay your fee. For us, it was like a $450 fee just for the septic permit. And 2 weeks later, we had our septic permit in the mail. which meant we could move on to construction. So after you have your septic permit in hand, you're good to move forward with building the system. Again, not something that I personally know how to do. We hired a local excavating company. They also install septic systems. They've done a ton of them, so they knew where to go. I learned a ton from them. So just to kind of give you an overview of the installation process, we sit here on a hill. Our house is going to be at the top of the hill, and about halfway down we'll have the tank, the septic tank, and then below that are the leach lines out in the flat part of the land. They started by bringing a backhoe in here and excavating for the septic tank. I opted for the 1,500 gallon tank over the 1,200 gallon tank, just to give us a little bit more time between pumping. As long as your tank is working the way it's supposed to, it's really not going to make that much of a difference. But once they excavated for the tank and got it set in there, they moved on to the leach lines. Those trenches were 3 feet wide by 2 feet deep, and for our system specifically, we had a total of 300 lineal feet of leach line. It took for the tank and the leach line excavation, it took them 2 days of work, and that consisted of a backhoe, an operator, and a laborer helping them out get the line set level. So it's important to know where your leach lines are in the ground after they get covered up. You never know what's going to happen in the future. You may need to, find them again for a repair or whatnot. So for us, what I did while the trenches were still open is take some measurements from fixed points on the property, relatively fixed points. They're trees because there's nothing else permanent out here, and no rocks were in the vicinity that I could pull from. But I took measurements from the base of a tree to the outlet of the septic tank, and to each subsequent distribution box, and documented the angles that came off of like the connections of the pipe, measured the distances between those angles and the distribution box, and then once we had the distribution box located, there are inspection points at the end of the leach line that are covered up with those green irrigation boxes. So I know where the distribution box is, and I know where the end point of the leach line is, and it's a straight line from there. So you can easily locate the leach lines that way. So there are different types of septic systems. Some require more attention than others. If you have a more advanced system and they have, electrical float switches, pumps, or other, mechanical pieces other mechanical components, you're going to have it inspected, and you have potential for more things to go wrong. If you have a standard gravity-fed system like we have, really they don't require much. There are some products that you can put into the tank that are supposed to promote the right type of bacteria for breaking down your solids and stuff. But really, the only maintenance that comes along with a standard system like this is making sure that the tank gets pumped. Like I said, we have a 1,500 gallon tank. The next size down is a 1,200 gallon tank. And really with a 1,500 gallon tank, they say you can expect to pump it every 3 to 5 years. But there are factors that come into play with that. One is the size of your household. If you have, 12 people going poop in there on a regular basis, you're going to fill that tank up a lot faster. If it's just my family, my wife and a baby, it's going to take us a little while to generate 1,500 gallons worth of poop that we're going to need to pump it. But it's not just poop that's going in there. It's other solids. Anything you put down the garbage disposal, really any solids that are going down a drain is going to affect how fast that fills up. And if your bacteria is going right in there and it's breaking down that stuff at a rate at which it's supposed to, for a normal family size, you can expect probably get up to 5 years out of that tank before it's going to need to be pumped. One side note, as opposed to throwing additives into the tank to promote that bacteria, I had an old timer that lives close by who's built homes in this neighborhood for 30 plus years and has done septic tanks in all of them. He said that one way, and I don't know if this is true, but he said that one way you can tell when you have the good kind of bacteria going in there breaking down your solids is when you lift up the inspection tank, which I think we're going to go look at in a sec, and you see little flies flying around in there. Things are working right. So that's one thing that you can look at your own risk, though, because I think it's going to be gross. So one thing I forgot to mention was bleach. It's a common household item. It's a great item. But when it comes to going down into your septic tank, you want to avoid putting any sort of large quantity down there because bleach is made to kill germs and bacteria. And like I had mentioned earlier, inside that tank you have a lot of bacteria working to break down your solids. So if a lot of bleach finds its way in there, it's going to slow that process or stop it altogether, which is going to lead to those solids building up pretty quickly. And that can cause problems further down the system in your leach lines if solids make their way into the leach lines. It'll cause your tank to fill up faster. All around it just creates problems. So bleach is okay to use, but use it smart and don't put a lot of it down into your system.